let's just start with where we are today. What
We can go back so far.
I know, right? That's the thing. There's so much history between everything you've done, everything we've done together,
Mm-hmm.
where you came from, where you are now. But I think the thing that's most relevant is specifically your experience with TTL and how you got to this point. And then we can kind of explode out everything that fits into that, from your athletic pursuits, your content pursuits, the business pursuits, the podcast, the merch. There's a lot to dig into. But I think, how did you get to this point where we're at right now?
Man, like you said, like what I have going on is so multifaceted. It's hard to point it in one single direction, but I think if I just had to look back on like what my personality type is and what I enjoy doing, I got into like picking up a camera as a kid and making little skateboard style edits. And I took exploring cinema in high school and really fell in love with this multimedia aspect of telling a story. And when I put together a video and for like my senior project or whatever, and showed it to some people, they're like, wow, that's actually pretty good. You know, like feeling that connection to people and feeling like this thing that I had in my head now existed in real life and I was able to show it to someone. I think that's what I probably love the most. And is at the core of what I like to do.
What's interesting too is that I think a lot of people will see that Triathlon Life. They'll see the existing where you are right now and think that was always the vision and that was always where it came from. But you think about all the iterations that you've gone through, from making that film in high school to like Viking Life, to just experimenting with YouTube, to experimenting with some short form and long form, to eventually landing where you're at. There were some pretty big steps along the way that you kind of took to get to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
what was kind of what was the final turn to create that Triathlon Life? I mean, was it just like a continuation of everything and just a rebrand of kind of where you're thinking, or was there something more intentional about it, or has this just been the result of just pure iteration over like a decade plus of filming?
Yeah, so like I started a YouTube channel way back when I was first, was it before I was sponsored by Red Bull? I think it was.
Mhm.
Because I think I remember on our like the intro document you were trying to get me approved. It was like existing YouTube channel, Viking Life. I didn't name that. That was my manager at the time that came up with that name, but he liked to call me the Viking. But that I started in with that, and the big kind of impetus for me behind doing YouTube stuff was I literally was thinking I want to watch YouTube videos about triathlon. I want to watch literally anything about triathlon, and I've watched every race from like 1990 onward over and over on the trainer and on the treadmill as I'm running in Portland in the rain. And I thought, man, if I can just like, maybe I could put some stuff out there that's the way that I want YouTube triathlon content to be, in a little bit more surf film, a little more skate film style. And then maybe a company like Red Bull will literally, this is what I was thinking, take notice and start making content like this about triathlon. If I can just get somebody's attention that thinks, oh, triathlon's actually interesting, and then I'll be able to watch that content. I don't, at that time, I was not like, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker and I'm going to make a ton of YouTube videos. It was kind of just, I want to get the ball rolling in this space.
I think that's one of the things that a lot of people miss out on. I was talking to someone this morning, in fact, that I said, you can't just show up to Red Bull and say, hi, I would like you to make a Red Bull TV show about what I do, because there's a line out the door of people doing that. But if you make your version of that and they see it, there's a better chance that they're going to be like, oh, look what this person is doing. They already have some momentum. Let's pour a little bit more fuel on the fire. And you did exactly that. You had a running start. We did the solstice sessions and a few other little bits and pieces to like help get the ball rolling. But I think that you carried that momentum well beyond where Red Bull could have probably even taken it, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to say. I was, I was very bummed when I got let go from Red Bull, and the reason why was, I think powers that be said, oh, triathlon's a competition based sport and an artistic based sport. And even though I think to this day, I'm still the only triathlete that Red Bull's ever sponsored to do a content piece about anything. I felt pretty bummed out about that, but it also put a little bit of chip on my shoulder of like, well, I guess it's back to doing this 100% on my own. And it kind of cleared me up to have complete control over my brand. For better or for worse, you wear a Red Bull helmet, like you're completely associated with that brand and what it stands for, and in positive or negative in people's minds. And without that, I could wear anything I wanted. I could start to make my own stuff, content, apparel, and it just, like it's became this completely wide open canvas. But I also felt like I had some tools in place that, I had the paintbrush ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being in one of those Red Bull meetings where they laid out like a promotional thing where it's like, okay, this many pieces of short form, this many pieces of long form. And at the time, it felt so overwhelming. But now, fast forward how many years, and you're doing kind of the same, like this many pieces of short form and long form
Mm-hmm.
week in and week out. But it's
Yeah.
interesting, you made the point of the difference between a performance and a project athlete, and I would contend that you've been riding the line between both for a really long time. Like there hasn't really been a point where you haven't been a project-based athlete, and there hasn't been a time where you haven't really been a performance-based athlete. I think you've kind of done both. And I think that helps each side of it out. It makes all the conversations easier because not every brand that you're going to potentially work with is going to be ready to do project based stuff. They're going to be expecting some level of performance,
Mm-hmm.
but also, the ones that are looking for project based athletes is kind of like a nice to have that there's also results rolling in. How do you how do you even think about that? And I know it's been a thing that you've talked about a lot with me where you're trying to find that right balance between those two.
Yeah, I mean it's that getting dropped from Red Bull because of the performance aspect, while I was also trying to organize projects, and I had a little bit of injury at the time and everything, um, was hard, and it stuck with me, and it stuck in my brain. Um, so I knew that even if I wanted to go off and be the free surfing version of a triathlete, and like make projects and get people inspired to do triathlon and like kind of think outside of the box, I knew that like the current landscape was just you win a race, you get more attention, you get bonuses from your sponsors, you get bigger contracts next year. And while I was living in and playing in that space, I was also trying to sprinkle in these little things like the Overland Triathlon and the Overland Triathlon 2 and the Solstice sessions. And then starting up really in earnest the YouTube channel and its like current form, where I feel like each week I try to make it feel a little bit like a ski film. It's not super like, here are the numbers that we're doing heavy. It's a little bit more, this is this beautiful place, and I hope this song gets you hyped. And you can watch this while you're on the trainer, or just like it might get you excited enough to go running that you get up and actually go out and do the training for today. I think that's what I want to put out there into the world. And slowly, I think I've just been luckily positioned where like the landscape is going. More and more companies say that's the stuff that they're most interested in. Results are great, but also like we need athletes who don't just disappear for 6 months at a time in between big results when they're injured or when anything is wrong.
Yeah. I think you've done a lot by putting out that content and kind of breaking ground when it came to being, the free surfing version of triathlon. You've basically introduced that industry to the idea of artistic elements in this sport that's so numbers and results focused. I mean, you kind of open their eyes to that because I think they were getting excited watching that stuff and wanting to be a part of it and trying to incorporate more of that. And you can see the downstream effect of everything that you've done with TTL in terms of other athletes kind of getting into it and more people trying to go that way. You've kind of started a movement within your own industry. And I think not only the athletes picked up on it, but I think a lot of the people who are in positions to make the decisions about sponsorship have kind of followed suit. And you kind of led the charge there, but you really kind of created the category of this sort of like filmmaker athlete in the multi-sport space. Do you think?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even necessarily say that a bunch of people have followed suit. I'd say, of the like 25 triathlon or pro triathlete YouTube channels that are out there, there are like maybe two that I think are really kind of trying to go like more artistic, more cinematic, more whatever. But the low hanging fruit and the easy thing is just to be like, I went out today and I did this bike workout, and here are my numbers, and here's the thing. And here's the race that I went to and here's how it played out. So I'd say like even to this day, I'm fighting a little bit of an uphill battle, and I'm still putting out the things that I want to see. Um, but it hasn't been like an overwhelming, oh man, everybody's making just like beautiful stuff, because at the end of the day, like a lot of people still want to learn how to be better at triathlon. And that's kind of the thing. That's the constant balance that I'm trying to do, is like, how can I make a thing that makes me happy and is visually stunning, but at the same time, it conveys just enough information that people feel like they got something out of it. They were also entertained, and it was 10 minutes long. And, you know,
Yeah, there's a
and
lot,
put a little bit of
well,
personality into it so that people start to care that it's you instead of just any triathlon or any informational video whatsoever.
there's that whole thing about being first, best, or different, but you also maybe want to have all three of those elements. Or there's also the concept of the hero hub and help content. But if you can wrap all that into each one of the episodes, there's also something really interesting about that too, to keep the audience engaged. I mean, I think looking through your channel, it's really consistent in terms of who shows up. So many other YouTubers, they live and die by like the topic of the video, and I don't see that on your channel at all. I see a really loyal audience of viewers in every single video that are always showing up for you guys, which that's got to
Yeah.
feel good, that you're not just trying to fight it out every single video to get views. People are willing to watch whatever you're putting out, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say I've done an absolutely terrible job of like algorithm optimization. And, you watch any video these days on like how to get views on YouTube, and it's like start with your thumbnail and your title and then like work backwards from there, versus since I'm an athlete at the same time, trying to be a high performance athlete at the same time I'm trying to make this content, I've been able to kind of start with, well, what am I doing this week? And what is interesting about this week? And what can I pull out of this week that might be, like I said, worth watching at all? And like at the end of the day, every week does not have some profound message. A lot of what we do every week in and week out is like a grind and is similar to the last week, but that is like the challenge and the interesting aspect for me. And I think yes, it has built up like a very strong group of people who come back each week. And like you could say maybe at the expense of bringing in new people, but I definitely subscribe to like the idea of 1,000 true fans and really reinforcing the existing relationship with the people that have already taken the time to watch your video. Because like clicking on a 15-minute long video, that is a huge commitment. Our days are so slammed and you don't only have so much time. And when somebody does that, I want to make sure that like their time is not wasted and they feel like they got value and they want to watch
Yeah.
something else.
I think the thing is authenticity, right? Where, yeah, maybe it's not optimized for the algorithm, but all those videos that we see on YouTube about, getting views and whatever, none of them have anything to do with authenticity. And I think that's the real thing that
No.
actually matters, because what actually matters behind this stuff is building community, building people that will show up for you, that will do exactly as you said, the Kevin Kelly 1,000 true fans. If you have 1,000 people that are riding for you no matter what, that are watching your videos, that are showing up at races, that are buying your merch, that are just backing you, you're fine. You're set forever. You don't need anything more than those 1,000 people that are just like on your team. That kind of
Yeah.
leads me into the question really of, you talked about not having to wear, a Red Bull hat or helmet, and you could start to develop your own stuff. Merch seemed to be kind of the first big thing that was unlocked after the channel really started getting some traction. Can we talk a little bit more about how that came about? And I mean, is that something that you've been kind of iterating and thinking about for a long time? I mean, I feel like you really came out swinging with like the first drop of TTL gear. How did that happen?
Yeah, I think it's because it wasn't necessarily the intention. I didn't set up the YouTube channel to make merch, to, whatever. I really kind of from the beginning with all of this, and I say the beginning going back to, I mean, like forever, just like the first time I picked up a camera, like, what do I want to see? What do I think is cool? And I'm going to do that. And it wasn't so much like, yes, there was this component of like, well, I really need to not go broke in the process, and this is going to build a little bit of a thing that will make it so I'm not so reliant on sponsorship income and like you get injured and like all the things. But everything was like, what is cool? Like let's do a cool thing. And it sounded cool to have a little logo for our YouTube channel. Like I started it up kind of doing like weekly things just as a challenge to myself at the end of 2019 to see if I could. Um, and kind of just rolled right into 2020. And then in early 2020, everything hit the fan and it got crazy and we were in lockdown and the channel was going great and people were bored. So they were watching YouTube in record numbers. And I put out a call out on Instagram, like, I started calling it That Triathlon Life just to see how it felt. It felt like kind of a thing that I felt like could be potentially a brand that I could see somebody, myself wearing a shirt that says this, because that kind of identifies me and who I am. I want to make a life in this sport. I don't want it to be a one and done. I want to, enjoy it for all aspects of it and the process versus like the end result. And, a couple different people reached out about helping out with a logo. The guy who ended up doing our logo, Ralph Dunning, like branding legend, didn't know at the time when he first reached out. And so we like put a little bit of logo on the YouTube channel, and then immediately people started asking like, "Hey, are you guys going to make shirts? Are you going to, I would love to have a hat with that on it or whatever." And that kind of went on for like 3 or 4 months before I really felt like I got up the courage and the time to figure out how to get a hat made and figure out how to get a shirt made. And then what are we going to do when people buy this? Am I going to put these shirts in a box and ship them to everyone? Because we looked at our YouTube channel and it's international audience. I don't know how to ship. I've shipped things internationally like one time in my life, and it's a huge pain. So we really waited until like a lot of comments and stuff were asking for it before we really took the plunge and figured out how to do it. And it just like went crazy, went absolutely crazy. We sold out. I think I put in $6,000 of my own money at the time, which was beyond terrifying, into our first run of stuff. So, if we sold that, we'd make like 40% margin on that. And I think we'd walk away with $10,000 total or $11,000. And that was just gone instantly. So we opened up a pre-order and like pre-sold some stuff, which was also terrifying, and had an incredible first weekend of selling things. And that was it. We were off to the races. And I will say, like, the next launch that we did was equally as terrifying, because in my mind, I'm like, all right, everybody feels like they supported us and they did a thing and that was fun, and Eric and Paula, and whatever, box checked. And so the next time that I put up some more money for a launch and it sold out, that was still just, and even to this day, you just don't know. And it's been really incredible, but I'm still just going off of that concept of like, what do I want to see? What do I want to wear? What can I imagine somebody wearing at a triathlon or at Heathrow and bumping into another person and being excited and connecting over this brand and feeling like it represents a way that they want to be or a way that they are.
It's really thoughtful, and you don't actually see that too often. I think a lot of the stuff is just like put the logo on it and go for it, but you've really thought about, color theory and the way that it looks and where the logo actually is. Like you've put the effort into it to back up what you're saying about all that stuff. So
yeah, it's like the YouTube channel. Like if I want to put it out there, I want people to get this shirt and not just be like, oh, it worked. I want them to think this is actually a great shirt, and this, man, it's better in person than I saw on the internet, and like I want to wear it. And if Paula doesn't want to wear it, like we throw that design away immediately. So these are things, the only stuff we put out is stuff that we want to wear every day, and that so far has worked out pretty well.
that's awesome. Are you physically designing it? I know you had Ralph do the logo, but are you taking all that on? Are you working with people to help put that stuff together now, or how's it?
Yeah, like 90% of the stuff that we've put out, I have designed, which is just me putting our, using Photoshop or Illustrator and putting our logo on different color shirts in different color ways, and, different hats, and seeing a hat that I like and trying to figure out like, how do we get a patch that looks like that? And what does the weaving look like? And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't work out. And it's only been just recently that, that TTL has gotten enough momentum that I've met a couple of creative type people that have offered up their services and wanted to be involved. And that's where some stuff like the most recent Shred Till Bed collection came from. That was an artist who's been a fan of the brand for a long time. And he gave me this poster, and we decided to turn it into a poster that everybody could buy and a t-shirt, and worked on those colors together. And I think I'm okay at colors, but like I'm not an artist in terms of being able to freehand draw a new thing. So moving into the future, I think I want to do more and more of that kind of stuff. And I just absolutely love featuring art from an actual artist and like making that part of the story rather than Oh, surprise. Here's blue. And last week it was green.
Do you
Please buy.
so but when you do your merch stuff like this one and everything you've done, has it always been limited edition where it's like this colorway is the drop and then when this is gone we move on to the next one? Or do you have some like
Yeah.
standbys that are always in?
No, I've always, I shouldn't say always. I've been wanting to get to a place where we can have like this shirt and this hat and this hoodie. We just kind of like restock
Mhm.
them whenever they're out. But then I also like, I get most excited about the new things and the new products and the launch that goes along with the time, is inspired by our time in Ventura, California versus, this spot that we went camping 2 weekends ago. And so trying to stay on top of like keeping the regulars in stock and then doing special editions and like the timing of that is just, that's a little bit more than I can handle. So we've stuck with the special edition type of thing. And I don't know. At some point in time, I'm going to hire somebody who can help out with like product and supply chain and all that stuff. But I just do the best that I
Yeah.
can. It's my fourth
Yeah,
job.
of course, because you don't have enough stuff going on. But
I
you do
don't.
use, if I remember right, you have like a fulfillment center that takes care of the
Yeah.
printing and shipping for you. It's definitely a lot more than just like the Teespring like copy paste t-shirts. Like there's high quality and high touch like shipping to make sure that everything kind of meets your expectations, right?
Yeah, that's honestly been the biggest hurdle or struggle for us with any of the merchandise. I'm not like a huge fan of merch as a word, but the gear, the apparel, the products that we do, um, is like finding stuff that we're happy with. So our t-shirts are incredibly expensive relative to like what we could get them for because we really like using organic cotton. I really like using US grown cotton if at all possible. And like boom, all of a sudden 99% of the blanks that are available to you in the world are not do not qualify or meet like our ideal standard, and they're also more expensive, and there's like 4 colors and all this stuff. So then we went on this whole um journey of trying to do full custom ourselves, and I think we're at the end of that and are for the most part not going to be doing that moving forward just because of the volume that we're at. But we went through a process where it's like we want this fabric, this color, this is what the embellishment's going to look like, and we get strike offs, and that takes 3 months to get, and then 6 months from the time that you said this is the color we want, then you might have an actual shirt show up at your warehouse. And in the meantime, you've had a bunch of cash tied up in it, and it's terrifying. And I can't do the special editions like as quickly as I want to. So I don't know what the answer is for somebody who's first starting up, but if quality is not like your primary concern, then man, it gets so much easier. If you just pick any random blue shirt and put any random logo on it, and your entire goal is just to get your mark out into the world and give somebody something that they can wear 2 times, that would be a lot simpler, I gotta
Yeah,
admit.
but that's not a brand necessarily, where I think what you've got now is like a
Yeah.
legit brand that has extensions of, content and clothing and, these other partnerships that you've got and these collaborations as well. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
difference, right? Like if you don't put the quality in and the thought into the whole thing, you're not going to get the other results that should come with it as well. But if you are putting that thoughtfulness into everything you're doing, it becomes a brand. It's not merch, it is
Yeah.
actual like product.
Exactly. I want everything to feel cohesive, and I wouldn't be proud of it otherwise. And like I put 110% effort into our videos and into the photos that I take, and I'm trying to make them better every single time that I do it. The apparel's the same way. The relationships with brands, maybe to the detriment of my sanity. And it's just like escalate, escalate, escalate. Maybe not in terms of like an amount, but certainly in terms of a quality. I always want to look at the next thing and like, how can I do it better than what I just did? And I think that that builds
Mhm.
trust as well with people, because like again, like I don't want somebody to watch one of our YouTube videos and be like, wow, this is maybe they think it's the best YouTube video that they've seen about triathlon, and then they order a t-shirt and they're like, this is the worst t-shirt I've ever gotten that has a triathlon thing on it. I don't want that to happen. I want to try to have it all feel like, wow, that was great. Wow, that surpassed my
Yeah, you're
expectations.
so intentional with the way that everything is presented from the partners that you're choosing to work with, the gear that you're sending out, the content that you're putting out. It seems so intentional, and I think that kind of comes through. How do you think about the partners that you do bring in, whether it's partnership? And it must be a bit of a challenge because there's two of you who are both like professional athletes, but then you also have content and you have the brand. Like there's so much going on. How do you guys how do you work that when it comes to pulling it all together?
I mean, we only work with brands that make things that we want to use. It becomes very simple. Like, well, this brand is offering X. Well, I don't like it. Oh well, it doesn't matter how much it was. I didn't have a good feeling about it, or Paula didn't have a good
Mm,
feeling about it, and so we just say no. And that is, I know that's hard to say when you're first starting out, but when I was first starting out, a power couple in triathlon, Heather and Trevor Wertel, as I was trying to find my first sponsors, gave me some advice that stuck with me a long time, or just like a saying of like, if you pick up one good partner a year, you're doing great. Just like one partner that is like ride or die, has exactly the product you want, is going to tell your story as you're telling their story, and like truly work together on something, you're dialed. And you just pick up one a year, and over the course of 5 years, you've got a great stable, and you have like these tight relationships. And like I don't get dropped by brands. Like there's been a lot of tumultuousness in the bike industry lately, and Paula and I have made it through lots of rounds of athlete cuts because I think we've made deep connections with people at the companies. And anytime I can help and like again exceed expectations, I do the best that I can. And I just think that gets you a long way. You can't rush it. You can't be impatient. And for us, it's just, we're very fortunate to be able to have that North Star and be able to stick to it and say, if we don't like it, we're not using it. If we're super into it and the company came to us, like, let's go. And we can tell this story because we actually are psyched
yeah.
on this.
Yeah, you guys are coming in with a ton of intention, and honestly, you have a lot to offer all of these brands. I mean, just thinking about all the different ways you can get a message out to a really well-built community as well. Not only do you have the gear, you've got the YouTube channel, you've got a podcast that's, you're over 100 episodes into the podcast as well, right?
I think as soon as we're off of this podcast, I think we're recording
Wow.
129. Yeah, which is fantastic. I'm blown away by
Tell
that.
me about the podcast, because that was sort of a later addition to the mix. What made you think that you needed to add another thing to your plate?
We thought about it for a while, um, but really it was just that there were a lot of topics and things that we couldn't really cover in depth enough on
Mhm.
YouTube or on Instagram. I felt like, oh, I really wish I could talk about this and say this about what we're doing this week, or talk about this project, or a how to do a thing. But in it, with a YouTube video, it was very hard for me to fit that into our style because I was trying to make these ski film style YouTube videos. So like in each YouTube video, at the most, I could talk to the camera for like a 2 minute long segment about a thing that I cared about. And then I felt like I kind of need to get back to just like the general life stuff for me to
Mhm.
enjoy it. It was that, or like, man, I just got to like start up a whole subgenre of our YouTube channel where there's like 3 minute long things of me and Paula talking about the things that we want to talk about. Oh wait, that's what a podcast is, except it can be an hour long and you can take as much time as you want, and people are like tuned in and listening, and generally less distracted, I think, than when they watch YouTube
Hmm.
videos even.
Yeah, that sounds right. I find that a lot of people end up listening to this podcast when they're out on runs, and that's all you got. You're just running and listening to it versus
Yeah.
you're totally right. If I'm watching a YouTube video, I probably have three other windows open, or I'm on my phone, or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's 100% right. And what a deeper way to kind of connect with the audience and the community to give them more information and stuff that's not optimized for the algorithm, but is optimized for their life and stuff that's actually going to be beneficial to them in a meaningful way,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like what I was saying with, I don't, do well optimizing the algorithm for bringing in new people on YouTube. Um, but I really am passionate about like deepening the connection with the existing people. And the podcast is like, it actually does both of those super well. but I think you can really give a lot of value and information and build a connection with
Yeah.
people over the course of an hour long
You get a
episode.
real sense for somebody on a podcast versus YouTube. You can chop, 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 and you get like a little sound bite or you get whatever, but you don't really get to know the
Mm-hmm.
person over a 10-minute YouTube video the way that you would over an hour long discussion,
Yeah.
right? The little in between bits and
Yeah.
pieces really stand out.
Yeah, since the YouTube is like my baby, and the podcast is a thing that I thought was great, but our friend Nick is really the creative
Mhm.
aspect behind it. I get a little bit jealous of the podcast sometimes because like, man, like this is such good stuff, and we're like really ourselves at minute 45 of this thing, and I wish I could somehow have this happen all the time with the YouTube videos. But the thing is like when I'm filming Paula doing a thing, obviously I'm not on camera, so I'm not getting like our interaction so much. And a lot of the times it's just, with a podcast, like you're going there at 6 p.m. and you're sitting down in the room to have this conversation about this thing versus the YouTube channel. The way that I've shot it is a little bit more, oh, I think this is going to be interesting. So I'm going to bring the camera along, and then hopefully Paula is receptive to that. And we're in it, like there's so many more aspects to it, and it's like really on the fly. And I just, like I said, I sometimes get like, man, we just have the great talks on the podcast, and I wish I could get that into the YouTube every week.
Well, so Nick came about. He's like a musician, right? He was helping with some music for the videos originally, and then you kind of pulled him into podcasts. So like, how did that all come
Yeah.
together?
He found our YouTube channel in, I think it was in 2020, and reached out on Instagram, direct message, and he said, "Hey, I'm a music guy, music producer, and I just really like what you're doing. I'm super fired up about triathlon, and here's like 15 songs that I wrote that were supposed to be in a North Face film, and right at the last minute they decided it was going to be too expensive or whatever, and they decided not to use them and use some other songs that they got from some site. And so here are like 15 great songs that don't have a home, and if you want to use any of those, go for it. Also, I have a whole bunch of other stuff that I've just been playing around with, and I can send you." And I mean, at the time, I was like, "This is freaking amazing. Yes, I will use all of these." And I, like, "What kind of music do you do?" And we just kind of started hitting it off, and it turned out that we were both very very similar people, endurance athletes with this like super creative streak, and which came first, it's hard to say, but we kind of aligned in a very similar way and feel the same way about content and what we want to see out there.
That's so cool. That's and what I feel like you've had so many interesting people just drop into the DMs over the course. I mean, DM,
Always check your
right?
DMs. It's a lot of work, but man, there's like, that's how I met Ralph. That's how I met Nick. Quite a few people who are now involved in TTL adjacent. That's I try to give everybody a little bit of time if at all
Mhm.
possible.
I think it's also, from your standpoint, you raised your hand by making content, by putting yourself out there, by putting your vision out into the world, and that made it so people could see that and lock in and say, "Hey, this is my stuff right here. I want to help this guy out. I want to see him succeed." And I feel like so
Yeah.
much of this stuff, if you don't put it out there to start with, you're never going to get that stuff, even if you have the intention. It's a matter of execution, of actually getting it done and being the person. And there's that whole was it the man in the arena or whatever, where it's like you got to be in the middle of it, you got to be doing it, and then things come to you essentially. But without it, it's just kind of
Yeah. Yeah. It's one thing to say, "Hey, I'm going to go do this." And it's another thing to be, yeah, that's a great analogy. You're in the arena, you're freaking doing it. And somebody up in the stands is like, "Man, I've always wanted to be in the arena too."
yeah.
That is
We
sick.
are
Get, get me down there.
we're there. There's a similar line that's like, if you did everything you needed to do, we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs. But ultimately, it just comes down to execution and people who actually follow through on the stuff they say they're going to do, which is something that you've absolutely done. I mean, I've heard you talk about this artistic vision of triathlon for a very long time, and you've been chipping away at getting closer and closer and closer. And I think the next step that we see coming together is this film that you're working on. tell us more
Yeah.
about this project. It does feel like a big culmination of sort of where you've wanted to go for a while. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like this artistic, cinematic, really putting triathlon or multisport in the right position or the right light. Talk a little bit about how it came together and kind of your vision.
Yeah. I, very early on, I wanted to make a film. And I started, solstice sessions and the overland triathlons. Those were steps in that right direction. And I've, kind of been honing my skills through weekly videos over the last few years, but more and more each video that I make, I see this grand vision in my head of how I would shoot this and what I would really, in the perfect world, how I would do it. And I'm just constrained by I'm training and I'm trying to run the business and I'm trying to be a good partner and I can't quite do it. And I have to sacrifice a little bit. And I'm just gonna have to shoot half of this on a GoPro this week. And I'm just gonna have to, make these concessions. But I it's there in my mind how I want to shoot the perfect thing. And I feel like I've finally hit a point in my career where my sponsors are so on board with what I want to do. My partner Paula is racing so well that Triathlon Life and our, us as a couple is incredible, is going fantastic. Any results that I could have would be cool and people would like that, but she's ranked number 4 in the world. Like we're super dialed on the results front as a unit. And I've had conversations with the brands I work with and kind of told them hey, I want to try, I kind of want to go in a little bit more of a creative direction. Everybody has come back with great responses. So yeah, my vision is to basically do like a feature length ski film or a feature length surf film, skateboard film style, where I am just telling the story of being passionate about being outdoors and doing multiple sports. I'm going to try to not even say triathlon, if at all possible, in the film. And really, I want to just present triathlon in the way that I've always seen it romantically in my mind of you have this body and this engine that you've built that allows you to cover any terrain on Earth and in a fluid way that feels good. And what are the most interesting and creative ways that you can harness that machine? And in triathlon, the status quo is certainly oh, you got to go to a race and you got to try to get a PR and you got to try to qualify for the world championships. And it's this very results based thing. And the more people that I kind of tell about this film concept, they go, oh, when I really think about it, what I love the most is building and thinking about a thing and can I actually do it? Can I hit these power numbers? Can I, complete this course? And it might be a race, but I'm I kind of want to put it out there that, hey, what if it wasn't a race? And what if it was, what is the point of surfing in my mind, or snowboarding or backcountry skiing? It's you call up a couple buddies, you're I got this idea. There's this peak, there's this thing. Oh, we want to do it. And you all try to figure out what it's going to take for you to get there and how much money and what skills and how fit you got to be. And you go after it and you make a story and get out there. And what if multisport was like that?
That would be epic. And then after you do the first one, then you're going to have to do it again and, build on that and build beyond, you can't just make one epic snowboard film. You got to make 4 or 5. So hopefully you got some other stuff.
For sure. No, I mean, I think that this can just be, this is the proof of concept for me. And like you said about the arena thing, I put together what I think is a really good deck to show to sponsors to try to get support for it and try to not, again, do the things that I want to do and send the message that I want to send them and not go broke is this is my goal. And I think I'm going to make that happen. The sponsors that I've talked to about it have been super psyched and they want to be a part of it and they align with the vision and want to support. But at the end of the day, if they didn't, I would shell out the money to make this happen. We would bootstrap it and we would put it out there into the world because I just I feel really deeply that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I hope the world will like it and feel it.
I feel like that's assured I mean, again, you've done the work to build the community. You've got the 1,000 true fans. You're doing something that is, completely different from what everyone else in your industry is doing. You're going to introduce something that is such a higher quality output, that is going to feel different, that's going to look different, that's going to resonate with people in a way that hasn't been done before. And I think, how could it not, ultimately? And we get a taste of what that kind of looks like in some of the videos that you've put out so far. But I think, what would it feel like to max out what you're capable of in a film piece with like pure intention behind it? I think that's going to resonate with a big audience. So I know you're not
Got
you're
to
not
find
going
out.
to
Got to get out there and try
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I mean, why not? You should. You've done more than a few videos on the internet, and you've tried, I think, every other kind of thing, and you've been successful across the board. But this is like your peak vision of making that happen. But I've got to imagine it's not just going to be another YouTube video that you hope the algorithm likes. And what's the goal to put it out in the world? Are you going to do like a film tour? Are you going to do like a special screening? Like, what's the release plan for this thing look like?
Yeah, I'm actually working with a couple of different people who have a lot more experience in that arena than I do. Like I've got a pretty good idea. Again, what do I think would be cool? What do I think would really drive it home for people and make people want to watch it? Um, but like for example, I do, yes, I would love to host a couple screenings. I'll do a couple screenings. I do want some version of it to be available on the internet for free. Um, I haven't decided yet or figured out if it's best for that to happen right away or like there's a paid version initially. Just like it kind of depends again on if sponsors get involved and how much this cost me and if I need to try to recoup a little bit of the costs. But it would be awesome to have a film screening like in Bend, probably one in like the San Diego area, maybe Boulder, and then put it out on the internet for everyone to see. I'm basically building out a bunch of like kind of sidecar pieces that'll be the gear behind this scene and the gear behind this scene. And inside of those things, I can give the sponsors a little bit of love that have given me special product or that, the product that was essential to go swim in icy cold waters in like way up in
That's
Canada. Yeah. So I hope like if the final piece like were to end up on, a streaming service or something magically, then at least I can put out a bunch of like little hype pieces that people can enjoy in and of themselves. And then maybe, it'll sell them on getting onto that streaming thing.
yeah.
That's like a work in progress. And luckily the partners that I'm working with this on, so far, Wahoo and Castelli and Orca wetsuits have all voiced full support, and Castelli and Wahoo have both voiced, committed verbally to helping out with the launch strategy. Wahoo, like a big part of the reason we work with Wahoo is because they do such great content. They have a lot of experience with launching long form content like this. And I'm going to be, utilizing some of their resources and know-how. And then Castelli has already said, like, we want to put on a premiere in Portland or Bend, and here's the amount of money we're willing to put in on that. We want that to be
That's
our thing.
cool. That's really cool. And I think you're going to open doors for your future projects, but also, other people in the sport to, you'll be the first to do it, but it won't be the last time that happens. And so much of the stuff that you've done has kind of broken that ground. And I think this will be the next step. And then it's kind of up to you
Yeah,
to see how much further you can push it. But
yeah, we'll see. I like the concept of it is very much like there's a swim scene and there's a bike scene and there's a run scene, but it's not like, hey, we're doing a
mhm.
triathlon, you know. And so my hope is that it's a little bit transcendent and gets a little bit of love in the running space and gets a little bit of run in the cycling space, love in the cycling space, and I don't know how much of a swimming space there is, but um, I would hope that maybe that we would see little bits of that kind of showing up in road cycling, in trail running, and again, these are cool things that I'm going to be able to turn around and
Mhm.
watch.
That's cool. That's really cool. I think it's going to be fun to watch this whole thing come together. And you've learned so much from your time doing this. You've kind of had the benefit of the cross pollination by all the content that you've kind of, whether it's ski, snow, surf, skate, footage is kind of cross pollinated into this, and it's made its way now into triathlon or multisport, really in a meaningful way. It's going to be fun to see the final product. I will absolutely be at the premiere for this one. I'm excited.
Awesome. We'll save you a
Sweet.
seat.
It's been so cool to see the process up to this date. I feel like I've had a near front row seat for almost all of it. But what happens after this film comes out? I mean, how do you think about continuing these platforms, and just is there another kind of gear that you're looking to hit in terms of this? Like, YouTube is sort of like this endless like beast. It's always looking for more content, same with podcasts, same with everything that goes into content. Does making a film make it feel a little bit more like, oh, if I could slow down the quantity and just have higher quality? Or how do you think about how these things kind of interact?
Yeah. I'd say that's more or less at the heart of it. I kind of felt in the last year of this like 3-year process of putting out a video every week that I wasn't able to, like I said, hit the level of quality that I wanted. I like, am I actually saying anything, meaningful to anybody? People are feeling like they're our friends and they're along for the journey. And in every 5 episodes or so, maybe there's an overcoming moment, or they pick up something that's valuable. But I really, like, through the film and through stuff that I want moving forward, I want to be a little bit more intentional about, this is the reason I'm making this thing. I put thought into it ahead of time. It's not just what I had time to do. And and here's the value that I think it's going to bring, whether it's motivational or instructional, or just like creating a connection and making people feel like they've got a friend or a community or a bunch of other people that feel the same way as them. So I hope that TTL films, we can put out 2 of them a year, 3 of them a year. I would love to get to the point of where I can, get it up enough that we have like enough of a distribution platform or financial backing that it's not just me. And if somebody came to us and said like, oh, I just really want to make this multi-sport or this single sport, but endurance focused thing that I feel like aligns with the style that you've put out there, that we could host that on our channels and like do the launch for, and start to be a spot that more powerful content
Mhm.
can live. And then like at the same time, I think I can kind of basically go to the other polar end of the spectrum and look at like, what is the value that the podcast brings in terms of instruction and helping people who are just starting out in the sport, and give information, or just something like that's a little bit quicker, that keeps the YouTube channel alive but isn't as high lift. And I think as I'm doing this, like there's going to be somebody else involved at some
What
point
about,
with
so you have
production.
like your development team as well, with a lot of up and coming triathletes, right? What
Yeah.
I mean, do
Hmm.
they is there a future for them maybe on the TTL where they could kind of take on some of that content stuff or take that off your plate? What's your vision for the development team?
Exactly. My body is not going to be at a professional level forever. It feels pretty beat already, having done triathlon since 2001 and been racing professionally since whatever 2012. And I really want TTL to live on well beyond what my body and what Paula's body are able to support. And like the worst thing I can imagine is if we have to retire from racing and TTL just cease to exist because we've made it just about
Mhm.
ourselves. So, like, again, the development team is a thing that, even since I was a developmental athlete, made me excited. I thought, oh man, someday, like, I feel so grateful for the people that have sponsored me, and like when it didn't make any sense, and supported me and helped me get to where I am doing the thing that I always wanted to do, being an athlete, not having a desk job. Like, I want to be able to return that and give that back to some people as well. Like, I don't know how it makes sense. I don't know how it's going to pencil out, but that is so cool. And I just got to figure it out. And then, yeah, obviously, like there's the added bonus of they can be personalities and represent the brand when Paula and I cannot. And, if I'm not making YouTube videos about us every week, then maybe every 3 weeks I can go to where one of them live and like make a video about them getting ready for their first race of X or Y or whatever's going on in their life. And yeah, I don't know, that makes me super excited to be able to like simultaneously do what I want to do, give back and connect with people, and have TTL like not just, fizzle.
Right.
Like we put so much time into it, and I think it means a lot to a lot of people. And I just want to like get it to the point where it's not no longer subsidized by Eric and Paula's sponsors, and it's own little business entity, and it's self sustaining.
Seems like it's definitely headed to that direction. And I think as part of that development team, it's not just racing. I mean, you made a career of being a project athlete who also happened to race and turn in solid results. And I think you're
Mm-hmm.
one of the first to really show that that's a possible path where it's not just, oh, just train super hard and win races. And that's the only path forward. And there's a ton of value for the athletes that are on your development team and really anybody in the sport who's paying attention to see, oh, there's another way forward. And for you to be able to turn around and offer that pathway to the next generation of athletes is pretty exciting, and ultimately is what's going to extend the brand in a lot of new ways. So I think that's going to be fun to watch you kind of like navigate that territory of not always having to be the one, shouldering the whole thing. Should be kind of
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I can't wait. It's going so well. Like we're in year 2. We've been able to bump up the amount of support we've been able to give, and I'm real and like they are getting great results this year. Like I've gotten some incredible pictures from Challenge Roth, from 70.3 La Sable, like just, and they're getting results, getting podiums. I'm having to pay bonuses for professional podiums, which is a thing I didn't have to do last year much at all. And that, I don't know, it's so cool to see TTL on the chest of somebody who's not me, who is like living their dream. And I don't know, I want to keep that ball going. So I'm hoping that like we've like really proved the concept now. And next year when I go to sponsors and say like, hey, here's what it's going to take, we want to make sure that each athlete gets double what they got last year in terms of like travel support and gear and on all the things that we can make that
That's
happen.
so cool. You basically like built a factory race team now in addition to. It's incredible.
Yeah. Oh man, like one of my most inspiring films ever is Bones Brigade.
Amazing.
Like I watched that so many times, and just seeing those kids develop and be taken from nothing. Like these were not athletes that were already established or whatever. Tony Hawk was just like a goofy kid, and Steve Caballero, and they turned him into something. They built a brand around him, and that gave them the launch pad to become professional athletes. It like, I just think that's the freaking coolest thing, and that like fires off every little piece of my brain that's like creative in how can I pull off a similar
That's
thing.
amazing. That would make you Animal Chin, I think, in Bones Brigade. That's amazing. You're like the legend, the guiding light for them, and it's true. That's exactly the role that you play. So that's pretty exciting.
I hope so. We're doing what we can. It's not huge, but helping out as much as we
That's
can right
cool,
now.
man. I mean, congrats on everything that you guys have put together. I mean, this has been it's such a cool thing to watch, and it's really just like a masterclass in an athlete who saw the path and saw, the execution of content, building a community, really getting the job done on so many different levels. You have all these different ways to basically not rely on anybody other than yourself to reach out to tell the story, to become this professional athlete, where so many other athletes are sort of reliant on their sponsors or on the media in their sport to get the message out or to get exposure, or they need to have a result to do it. And you've kind
Yeah.
of like removed that element by just creating it on your own. And that's something
Yeah.
that I think a lot of athletes could learn a lot from. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, it was very intentional. I say a lot. I was not a phenom to begin with. I was very mediocre. I still, like my best finish at world championships was 7th. I didn't come out and like blow anybody's doors off or wow anybody, but just like slowly grinded away and saw opportunities and things, that I wanted to do and that I was potentially good at that could make me a little bit more valuable and bring value to sponsors. And it was all, like I said, with the motivation of having fun and living this life in sport, which is and being outside, man. That's all I want to do.
Job done. Well, let's
It's never done.
it's a solid work in progress. We'll call it that. So
Yeah,
so we
that's
do
it.
this segment on the show called BPC, which is brand product content, and TTL could be all three, but I teed this up for you before we hopped on the pod. It's a segment we like to do every week of just something that kind of stood out to us that we're excited about. So since you're the guest, I'll let you go first. What stood out to you? Any highlights?
Brett Reeder circles for like brand content, the whole thing. Like every time I watch, because that's Common Sol to put that out, right?
Yes.
Every time, like best YouTube channel right now of any brand out there, in my opinion. Every video that I see that they put out, I'm like, that is so freaking good. And I don't, like I'm sponsored by Specialized, but if it at some point in time that fell apart or whatever, I'm now very appreciative of Common Sol and like the effort that they've put into content and everything. And man, if you got 8 minutes or 12 minutes or however long that piece is, like I would go watch that because it's just the writing, the transitions, the music choice, everything is just so dialed and beautiful.
It is. It's an incredible video. And actually, as of today, Brett Reeder just announced his retirement from competition, which means he's doing all projects from here on out. It's all going to be film content and likely on that Commensal channel.
I thought he like sort of did that a while
Today
ago.
it's official. Today he actually announced
Official.
it. But
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
he actually did own a mountain bike brand called Tidal that was recently acquired as well.
Yep.
So I think he's capable of just riding off into the sunset at this point. But I think we'll see a lot more content stuff come specifically for him. And it's definitely a trend that we're seeing a lot more of, specifically in the mountain bike space, where these free ride guys have done Rampage enough times. They've done Crankworks enough times. And it's just like, I want to do really fun projects that are meaningful to me, that I want to see happen. I've had this idea, but never had time to execute because I've been too busy traveling and competing. Now I'm going to lock in on circles, for example, or any other project. So keep an eye out for Brett Reeder for sure.
Dude, I should have been a mountain biker because that's my elevator pitch right now. But it's not obvious in multisport. Got to go out and convince some people that it's a thing. But oh man, that's the goal. That's the dream right there.
All right. Well, I'm gonna keep it in the mountain bike theme then. For actually,
All right.
no, this is wider than mountain bike, but it's anyway. I don't know if you saw this today, but Canyon Bicycles just did a collab with LeBron James. He's got this big ad. He's got, he's in the video with Fabio Widmer and a bunch of other of Canyon's riders, which is pretty incredible. I know that the behind the scenes is that LeBron James has been invested in multiple cycling brands for a pretty long time. I'm not really sure if he's actually a cyclist. Reggie Miller, another NBA legend, is a huge cyclist. But I know that LeBron, for instance, had a stake in the holding company that had like Cannondale and Schwinn and GT, I believe it was.
Oh no.
He had a big hand in them when they were Pacific Cycles, but never was utilized. But I guess I would assume that Canyon didn't just pay LeBron James a truckload of money to be in an Instagram video. I have a feeling
they're way more truckloads than they have for that.
It's an interesting partnership. I mean, it has to be only because he's invested, but I don't really know. I'd be curious to see if there's some sort of downstream thing, if Canyon is doing a line of bikes that are a little bit more accessible. And of course, they're a D2C brand, but
and super huge.
Yeah, like mainstream level bikes. I don't know. I'm curious to see.
I mean, they've got a couple of like pretty attractive city cruiser type things, if I remember. But I could see like, city e-bikes, anything that's just like kind of neat. That is, I don't know, that's so interesting. Because when I saw it, you just like, oh, okay, sweet. another huge name from a completely random place over here. Just heard, that the bike industry, like I can just scoop up another deal or whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, no, they can't afford LeBron. So what's actually going
Yeah.
on here? Um, but yeah, I don't, as like a long-term cyclist and everything, you just can't help. I personally can't help but just be like, what, I don't, huh? Why LeBron? Why,
Yeah, and it was just like a general brand video. It wasn't a product release. It wasn't anything other than just like, here's a video of LeBron James riding a canyon, which is great
Yeah,
visibility for Canyon. I'm sure that they had a huge impact in terms of traffic from the ad, but you got to
yeah.
wonder if they're going to follow it with any sort of line extension or anything. Yeah,
God, I hope so. Because otherwise, I'm
yeah, if
super
that was your
confused.
only shot at putting LeBron James, or even if he's going to do more videos, like that was the splash right there. You would want to
Yeah,
be kind of teed up and ready to go with some level of product ready to sell. And
yeah. I don't know, and I'm super curious just about the content. Like, okay, so this was a brand play, and like LeBron James like cares about bicycles a little bit, and you know, okay, now what? Like, you've just given us like this is the intro to a series of pieces of content and video and things to like. Okay, I'm curious. You got my curiosity, but now like, how does this make sense? Like, make it make sense for me, please, and don't just let it be like a huge billboard that got a lot of engagement, because that would just mm, that would make it worse than it if it didn't happen for me
yeah,
personally. Like, I want to know the why. Like, why?
and I
Come
can't
on.
imagine that of all the times to pull the LeBron card, I don't really feel like now is the right time. Like Canyon seems to be actually doing just fine. Which is again, like, why not like spend the time, develop a line, put it out? Really, I mean, you could do some really impactful things with LeBron James and the
Oh
right
man,
product line, right?
you go crazy. You could go
We're gonna
crazy.
keep our eye on this one for sure.
I mean, yeah, I can't not wait to see what happens next. Please, something happen next.
To be continued. Right on, man. Well, thank you so much for the time today. I'll be paying extremely close attention to this this film release that you're working on. I can't wait to see it. I know it's going to be epic. I mean, judging by everything else that you've put out, it's going to be intentional. It's going to be artistic. It's going to be well done. It's going to be thoughtful, and everything that you've put out has kind of followed that suit. So I'm excited for it, and I'm excited for all of our listeners to check it out.
Yeah, thanks, man. It'll be out sometime like November-ish is what I'm thinking. So
Perfect. Awesome.
can't wait. So I got a little bit more to shoot.
Excellent. Well, good luck with it, and yeah, we'll be cheering you on.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This is great.